close your eyes, and let the gentle rhythm of a bygone era wash over you. Imagine a sun-dappled medieval village square, a tapestry woven with the threads of daily life. The air, thick with the earthy scent of damp cobblestones, carries the murmur of 1,000 conversations, a symphony of human voices rising and falling like the tide. The rhythmic clang of a blacksmith's hammer echoes from a nearby forge, a steady beat against the softer sounds of children's laughter and the low hum of bartering in the marketplace. The aroma of roasting meats and freshly baked bread mingles with the pungent perfume of herbs drying in the sun, a heady blend that speaks of both sustenance and simple pleasures. Picture the scene. Sturdy timber-framed houses lean together, their walls adorned with vibrant hanging cloths, their gables reaching towards a sky painted with the soft hues of a summer afternoon. Wagons creak along the uneven cobblestones, their wheels raising puffs of dust that dance in the warm breeze. A gaggle of geese honks a discordant chorus, their bright plumage a stark contrast to the muted tones of the surrounding buildings. Life unfolds in this square, a vibrant, bustling tableau of work, play, and the everyday struggles of existence. But within this seemingly peaceful scene, shadows lurk. For in this medieval world, justice is a capricious mistress, her scales often tipped by superstition and fear rather than reason and evidence. This is a world where the line between the sacred and the profane is blurred, where the whispers of faith and the cries of the accused intertwine in a complex and often unsettling dance. We stand on the precipice of a journey into the heart of medieval justice, a system where the determination of guilt or innocence was far removed from the objective processes we know today. In this village square, and in countless others like it across the medieval landscape, the fate of individuals rested not on the careful weighing of evidence, but on methods as extraordinary as they were often cruel. Prepare yourself, for we are about to delve into a world where the line between justice and ordeal was often indistinguishable, a world where the outcome of a trial hinged not on reason, but on the whims of fate, divine intervention, or the sheer strength of one's belief. Over the next few hours, we will explore a fascinating and often unsettling array of trial methods, each one a testament to the beliefs and anxieties of a time long past. We will examine the ordeals, those terrifying tests of faith and endurance, where the accused were subjected to fiery trials, chilling plunges into freezing water, or the agonizing weight of a blessed iron. We will witness the power of compurgation, where the accused fate rested upon the testimony of their sworn supporters. We will delve into the complexities of trial by combat, where the clash of steel determined the outcome of a dispute. And we will uncover the role of divine judgment, where the outcome of a trial was attributed to the direct intervention of God. We will encounter the ordeal of the hot iron, where the accused had to carry a red-hot iron a certain distance. The ordeal of cold water, where the accused buoyancy or sinking determined guilt. And the ordeal of the consecrated morsel, where the accused was forced to swallow a piece of blessed bread. We will also examine the use of the ordeal of the cross, where the accused and accuser stood with arms outstretched, the one who faltered first being declared guilty. We will learn about the judicial duel, where the accused and accuser fought to the death, the winner declared innocent. We will discuss the role of oaths and the power of witnesses, both credible and otherwise. We will see how the church and the state intertwined to shape these unusual proceedings, and how these methods reflected the prevailing social, religious, and cultural beliefs of the time. The journey will take us through the intricacies of medieval law, the influence of the church, and the deeply ingrained superstitions that shaped the lives of those who lived under these systems of justice. These methods, though seemingly barbaric by modern standards, offer a unique window into the mindset and beliefs of medieval society, revealing a world where the boundaries between faith, superstition, and the pursuit of justice were often blurred and indistinct. Settle in, dear listener, and allow the tales of these bizarre medieval trial methods to transport you to another time, another place, a time when the pursuit of justice took unexpected and sometimes terrifying turns. Let the sounds of the medieval village square fade into the background as we begin our exploration of a world where truth was often elusive and the scales of justice were frequently weighted down by the extraordinary and the inexplicable. Now, let us turn our attention to one of the most visually striking and terrifying of the medieval ordeals, trial by fire. Imagine, if you will, a hushed crowd gathered in a wide, open space, their faces illuminated by the flickering flames of a bonfire. The air crackles with anticipation, a tangible tension hanging heavy in the smoke-filled air. At the center stands the accused, their fate hanging precariously in the balance, poised on the precipice of an ordeal that will determine their guilt or innocence. Trial by fire was not merely a physical test. It was a deeply symbolic act, a ritualistic purification intended to reveal the truth through divine intervention. The belief underpinning this ordeal rested on the conviction that God would protect the innocent, shielding them from the flames, while the guilty would suffer the consequences of their transgression. The very act of walking across burning coals or carrying a red-hot iron was seen as a direct appeal to divine judgment, a plea for God to intervene and reveal the truth. The preparations for such an ordeal were meticulous and steeped in religious ritual. The accused, often clad in simple, loose-fitting garments, would first undergo a period of fasting and prayer, a spiritual cleansing intended to prepare them for the divine judgment to come. Priests would offer prayers and blessings, attempting to invoke the power of the divine to illuminate the truth. The very act of preparation emphasized the sacred nature of the ordeal, underscoring the gravity of the situation and the profound belief in divine intervention. The ordeal itself was a spectacle, a stark display of faith, fear, and the unpredictable nature of divine justice. Depending on the specific variation of the trial, the accused might be required to walk barefoot across a bed of glowing embers, or perhaps to carry a red-hot iron a prescribed distance. The intensity of the heat, the searing pain, and the ever-present risk of grievous injury or death added to the dramatic and often terrifying nature of the proceedings. The crowd, a mixture of onlookers, witnesses, and perhaps even family members, would watch with bated breath, their emotions ranging from morbid curiosity to genuine apprehension. The interpretation of the results was as crucial as the ordeal itself. A successful passage through the fire, without significant burns or injury, was seen as clear evidence of innocence, a testament to divine protection. The absence of injury was interpreted as a sign of God's favor, a confirmation of the accused's purity. Conversely, any serious burns or injuries were interpreted as proof of guilt, a sign of divine wrath. The severity of the burns might even dictate the severity of the punishment that followed. This interpretation, however, was not always straightforward, and the judgment often rested on the subjective assessment of those in authority, leaving room for bias and manipulation. Historical accounts offer glimpses into the realities of trial by fire. While precise details are scarce and often shrouded in the mists of time, stories persist, illustrating the drama and often tragic consequences of this medieval ordeal. In some instances, individuals were known to employ various techniques to increase their chances of survival, such as applying protective ointments or employing other methods to lessen the intensity of the heat. However, the overall success rate, and indeed the very definition of success, were subjective and open to interpretation, making the outcome uncertain and often arbitrary. The practice of trial by fire, although rooted in a deep-seated belief in divine justice, highlights the limitations and flaws of a legal system heavily reliant on faith and chance. It represents a compelling example of how religious beliefs could shape even the most fundamental aspects of society, such as the administration of justice. As we reflect on this ancient practice, we can appreciate the stark contrast between this method and the more objective and evidence-based systems of justice we know today. The image of the accused walking across the burning embers serves as a powerful symbol of the stark realities of medieval justice, a testament to both the unwavering faith of the era and its profound limitations. The ordeal by fire, in its dramatic intensity and deeply symbolic nature, offers a profound insight into the mindset of medieval society and its relationship with faith, justice, and the mysteries of the divine. The crackling flames and the hushed anticipation of the crowd serve as a lasting reminder of the capricious and often terrifying nature of justice in a world where the line between faith and fear was often blurred. Now, let us delve into another chilling method of medieval justice: trial by water, specifically the ordeal of cold water. Unlike the fiery spectacle of trial by fire, this ordeal unfolded in a starkly different setting, often amidst the chilling stillness of a cold, deep body of water. Imagine a bleak morning, the air thick with mist, the water reflecting the gray sky above. A hushed crowd gathers on the bank, their breath misting in the frigid air, their faces etched with a mixture of morbid curiosity and solemn anticipation. At the water's edge, the accused awaits, their fate about to be decided by the unforgiving embrace of the cold, dark depths. The trial by cold water was rooted in a belief system that held that water, a sacred element, possessed the power to discern truth from falsehood. It was thought that the water, a symbol of purity, would instinctively reject the guilty, causing them to float, while the innocent, blessed by divine favor, would sink. This belief, as strange as it may seem to us today, was deeply ingrained in the medieval worldview, reflecting a profound faith in the power of divine intervention in the affairs of mortals. The process itself was often stark and unforgiving. The accused, typically bound tightly with ropes, would be subjected to a ritualistic preparation, perhaps including prayers and blessings, or perhaps simple pronouncements of their innocence or guilt. Then, with little more than a whispered prayer and a solemn farewell, they were cast into the cold, unforgiving water. The moment of immersion was a dramatic turning point, a silent plea to the divine for justice. The water, cold and dark, became a symbolic abyss, a gateway between the mortal realm and the divine judgment that awaited. The interpretation of the results was critical and often left room for subjective interpretation. If the accused sank, it was seen as evidence of innocence, a sign that the water had accepted them, recognizing their purity. The act of sinking was interpreted as a testament to their innocence, a divine validation of their claim. However, if the accused floated, it was interpreted as a sign of guilt, a rejection by the water, a symbolic condemnation by the divine. The act of floating was seen as evidence of divine displeasure, a testament to their wickedness. The outcome was often decided not solely on whether the accused floated or sank, but also on the speed at which this occurred and the overall behavior of the body in the water. This method, however, was fraught with potential for error, as several factors could influence the outcome, irrespective of the accused's guilt or innocence. Body fat, for instance, could affect buoyancy, and the temperature of the water could vary significantly, influencing the body's response. Furthermore, the very act of binding the accused could inadvertently affect their ability to swim or to control their movements in the water. Despite these inherent flaws, the ordeal by cold water persisted for centuries, a grim testament to the limitations of medieval justice. The subjective nature of its interpretation and the potential for manipulation serve as a stark reminder of the capricious nature of justice in a world where faith often overshadowed reason. Historical accounts of trial by cold water are often fragmented and lack the detail that modern sensibilities might demand. However, scattered references and anecdotes offer glimpses into the realities of this practice. We can imagine the chilling scenes, the hushed whispers of the crowd, the desperate prayers of the accused, and the solemn pronouncements of the judges as they interpreted the outcome. These were not merely legal proceedings. They were ritualistic performances, imbued with religious significance and the weight of divine judgment. As we reflect upon the ordeal by cold water, we are struck by the stark contrast between this ancient practice and the more refined and objective systems of justice that exist today. The image of the accused, bound and cast into the icy depths, serves as a powerful reminder of the limitations and flaws of a legal system profoundly shaped by superstition and faith. The trial by cold water, in its chilling simplicity and profound symbolism, offers a unique insight into the medieval mindset, reminding us of the crucial role of faith, fear, and the often arbitrary nature of justice in a time when the line between the divine and the earthly was frequently blurred. The cold, dark water, reflecting the gray sky above, serves as a lasting image of the uncertainties and the often cruel realities of medieval justice. Now, let us turn our attention to another ordeal, equally terrifying and deeply rooted in the superstitions of the medieval era: the trial by boiling water. Unlike the chilling plunge into icy depths of the cold water ordeal, this trial involved a different kind of watery torment: the searing heat of boiling water. Imagine a large cauldron, its iron sides glowing faintly, the water within churning and steaming, a visible representation of the divine wrath awaiting the accused. The air hangs heavy with the smell of steam and the palpable tension of those assembled. The scene is set not in a tranquil lake or river, but in a public square, a stark and dramatic stage for a test of faith and resilience. The trial by boiling water involved a seemingly simple task: retrieving a small object from a pot of vigorously boiling water. This seemingly straightforward act, however, was fraught with peril, and the outcome was interpreted as a divine judgment. The accused, often under the watchful eye of a priest or other religious figure, was given a specific period of time, a time measured out not in mere seconds, but in the agonizingly slow ticks of a medieval clock, each moment stretching into an eternity of anticipation and fear. The object itself was usually small and innocuous, perhaps a small ring or a stone, seemingly insignificant against the backdrop of the boiling water. Yet, this seemingly insignificant object held immense symbolic weight, representing the burden of guilt or the purity of innocence. The act of reaching into the boiling water was a profound act of faith, a testament to the accused's belief in their own innocence. For if they were innocent, so the belief went, divine intervention would protect them from harm. The physical risks were, of course, immense. The boiling water, a relentless and unforgiving force of nature, posed an immediate threat of severe burns, potentially leading to lasting disfigurement or even death. The very act of plunging one's hand into the scalding water was a gamble with one's own body, a desperate plea to a higher power for validation. The interpretation of the results was, as with other ordeals, far from straightforward. If the accused successfully retrieved the object without suffering significant burns, it was seen as a sign of divine favor, a testament to their innocence. The absence of serious injury was interpreted as a clear indication of divine protection, a confirmation of their truthfulness. The crowd would breathe a collective sigh of relief, their morbid curiosity replaced by a sense of awe and wonder at the power of divine intervention. However, if the accused suffered even minor burns, it was often taken as a sign of guilt, a clear indication of divine displeasure. The severity of the burns often dictated the severity of the judgment, with even minor scalds being interpreted as a condemnation. The burns, considered a visible manifestation of divine wrath, were often viewed as irrefutable proof of guilt, a punishment inflicted by a higher power. The cries of pain, the sight of blistered skin, became a testament to the accused's wickedness. The trial by boiling water, like the other ordeals, was deeply embedded in the religious and cultural context of the medieval period. It was a public spectacle, a dramatic interplay between faith, fear, and the uncertain pursuit of justice. The very act of submitting to this ordeal was a profound statement of belief, a desperate gamble on the mercy of God. As we reflect on this harrowing trial, we are struck by the stark contrast between the medieval world's understanding of justice and our own. The trial by boiling water, with its inherent risks and subjective interpretation, stands as a stark reminder of a time when faith and superstition often overshadowed reason and empirical evidence in the pursuit of truth. The image of the accused's hand, trembling, reaching into the boiling water, forever remains a potent symbol of a bygone era, a testament to the harsh realities of medieval justice and the immense power of faith, or perhaps the desperate lack thereof. The lingering steam from the cauldron, a ghostly reminder of the pain and uncertainty, serves as a potent symbol of a past era's struggles with justice and truth. Let us now delve into another unsettling aspect of medieval justice, the trial by hot iron. Imagine, if you will, a hushed crowd gathered in a dimly lit courtyard, the air thick with anticipation and apprehension. At the center stands a figure, their face etched with fear and determination, about to undergo a trial unlike any other. This is not a trial of wits or evidence, but a trial by fire, a test of faith and endurance where the very body becomes the instrument of judgment. The trial by hot iron involved the accused carrying a heated piece of iron, typically a rod or bar, over a specified distance. The distance itself varied, of course, depending on the severity of the alleged crime and the whims of the local authorities. It was a test of endurance, a painful walk that stretched the limits of human resilience. The iron, glowing with an ominous red heat, was a terrifying symbol of divine judgment, a tangible representation of the fiery wrath that awaited those deemed guilty. The preparation for the trial was as solemn as the trial itself. The iron was heated to an intense temperature, its glow a stark contrast to the hushed anticipation of the onlookers. Priests and other religious figures would often be present, their role not as impartial judges, but as witnesses to a divine spectacle, ensuring the process adhered to ritualistic protocols. Prayers were murmured, incantations chanted, the air thick with the scent of incense and the weight of unspoken anxieties. The accused, often bound by a sense of helplessness and despair, would be given a moment to prepare, perhaps to offer a final prayer, or perhaps simply to steel themselves for the searing pain that lay ahead. Then, with a deep breath and a silent prayer, they would grasp the glowing iron, their hands already feeling the scorching heat radiating from its surface. The walk itself was a slow, agonizing procession. Each step was a testament to their strength, or perhaps their desperation. The heat from the iron would have been unbearable, the pain searing and intense. With each step, the accused's skin would have been blistered, their flesh seared, their body subjected to a torment that tested the limits of human endurance. The journey was not just a physical ordeal, but also a spiritual one. The belief underpinning this trial was that divine intervention would protect the innocent, allowing them to withstand the pain without suffering severe burns. The outcome of the trial, therefore, rested not merely on the physical strength of the accused, but also on their perceived piety and moral standing. Upon completing the designated distance, or collapsing under the unbearable heat before reaching the end, the accused would be immediately examined by the presiding officials. The severity of their burns would be meticulously assessed, the outcome determining their fate. Minor burns, or even the absence of severe burns, were often interpreted as a sign of divine intervention, a testament to their innocence. Such a result would have been met with a collective sigh of relief, a public affirmation of their truthfulness. However, severe burns were taken as irrefutable proof of guilt, a visible manifestation of divine wrath. The deeper and more extensive the burns, the more pronounced the judgment of guilt. The sight of blistered, charred flesh would have been a chilling testament to the perceived wickedness of the accused, a public spectacle of divine punishment. The trial by hot iron, like the other ordeals, was far from a precise or objective method of determining guilt or innocence. It was a deeply superstitious process, reliant on the whims of chance and the subjective interpretation of the results. It was a trial that conflated physical endurance with moral purity, a testament to the limitations of medieval justice. As we reflect on this harrowing ordeal, we are once again confronted with the stark contrast between the medieval worldview and our own. The trial by hot iron, with its reliance on faith, superstition, and the infliction of physical pain, serves as a stark reminder of a less enlightened past. The image of the accused, their hands clutching the glowing iron, remains a haunting symbol of a time when justice was intertwined with fear and the unpredictable power of divine intervention. The lingering image of the burning iron, a symbol of pain and uncertainty, serves as a reminder of the darker aspects of medieval justice, a system where the line between faith and brutality was often blurred. Now, let us transport ourselves to a sun-drenched field, the air alive with the nervous energy of a gathered crowd. Before them, a spectacle unfolds, a trial unlike any other. This is trial by combat, a medieval duel where the fate of the accused hangs not on the weight of evidence, but on the strength of arms and the perceived favor of a higher power. Forget reasoned arguments and impartial judges. Here, justice is decided by the clash of steel and the sweat of battle. Imagine the scene. Two figures clad in rudimentary armor stand poised, their eyes locked in a silent confrontation. One is the accused, their life hanging precariously in the balance. The other, their accuser, fueled by righteous anger or perhaps darker motives. Between them, a space cleared for a battle that will determine not only the outcome of a dispute, but also the very fate of an individual. Trial by combat was a dramatic and often brutal method of resolving disputes. It was based on the deeply ingrained belief that God would intervene directly to ensure the victory of the innocent party. The outcome, therefore, was seen not as a mere contest of skill, but as a divine judgment, a testament to the righteousness of one party and the guilt of the other. It was a starkly different interpretation of justice, one where physical prowess and divine favor trumped reasoned arguments and forensic evidence. The rules, if they could be called that, were often loosely defined, varying from region to region and even from case to case. Generally, however, combatants were expected to fight until one was incapacitated or killed. The weapons used also varied, ranging from swords and lances to maces and axes, the choice often dictated by the social standing of the combatants and the nature of the dispute. Sometimes, the duel was a straightforward one-on-one fight. Other times, it involved champions fighting on behalf of the accused or accuser, a proxy battle where the skill and bravery of a hired warrior decided the fate of another. The preparation for such a trial was a solemn and often tense affair. Prayers were offered, religious rituals performed, and vows of allegiance sworn. The combatants would have undergone rigorous physical preparation, honing their skills, strengthening their bodies, and sharpening their weapons, knowing that their very lives depended on their prowess in battle. The anticipation would have been palpable, the air thick with the weight of expectation and the fear of impending violence. The duel itself was a spectacle of raw power and brutal efficiency. The clash of steel, the grunts of exertion, the cries of pain, all formed a chaotic symphony of violence, a grim ballet of life and death. The crowd, a mixture of onlookers, supporters, and curious observers, would have been a silent, captivated audience, their eyes glued to the deadly dance unfolding before them. The tension would have been almost unbearable, the outcome uncertain until the final blow was struck. The symbolic significance of the outcome was profound. A victory was seen not merely as a triumph of physical strength, but as a divine endorsement of the victor's cause. The winner, regardless of their initial position in the dispute, was declared innocent, their triumph a testament to their righteousness in the eyes of God. The defeated, on the other hand, faced a grim fate, their loss interpreted as a divine judgment of their guilt, often sealed with death or severe punishment. But the trial by combat wasn't without its flaws, its inherent biases, and its inherent injustices. It favored the strong, the wealthy, and the well-connected, those who could afford superior training, better weapons, or even champion fighters to fight on their behalf. It was a system that could easily be manipulated, a stage for the powerful to exert their dominance and crush their adversaries under the guise of divine judgment. The trial by combat, a dramatic and often brutal display of medieval justice, offers a compelling glimpse into a society where physical strength and divine favor were deemed more important than evidence and due process. Its legacy serves as a stark reminder of the stark contrast between medieval and modern conceptions of justice, a testament to the evolution of legal systems and our understanding of fairness and impartiality. The echo of clashing steel in a sun-drenched field, a reminder of a time when the fate of individuals was decided not in a courtroom, but on a battlefield. The image of two figures locked in mortal combat, a vivid testament to the often brutal and unpredictable nature of medieval justice, lingers long after the dust settles. Let us now step into the hushed sanctity of a medieval church, the air thick with incense and the weight of expectation. Here, within these hallowed walls, a different kind of ordeal unfolds, the trial by ordeal of the Eucharist. Unlike the fiery trials or brutal combats we've explored, this method relied on the perceived power of the consecrated elements themselves to reveal the truth. It was a test not of physical endurance, but of spiritual purity, a subtle yet terrifying judgment delivered through the very body and blood of Christ. Imagine the scene. A hushed reverence hangs in the air, broken only by the soft murmur of prayers and the flickering candlelight casting long, dancing shadows on the ancient stone walls. The accused, their face etched with a mixture of fear and hope, kneels before a priest, their fate hanging on the outcome of this sacred ritual. The priest, a figure of both spiritual authority and terrifying judgment, holds aloft the consecrated host, the bread transformed in the eyes of believers into the body of Christ. This is no ordinary bread. It is believed to hold the very essence of divinity, capable of discerning the truth and revealing the hidden secrets of the heart. The ritual itself was simple, yet deeply symbolic. The accused, after a period of fasting and prayer, was given a consecrated host to consume, or in some variations, consecrated wine to drink. The act of receiving the Eucharist was, for believers, an act of profound spiritual communion. But for the accused, it was a terrifying ordeal, a divine judgment disguised as a sacred act. The belief underpinning this ordeal was that the body of Christ would reject the unworthy, the guilty. The interpretation of the results was equally steeped in superstition and religious belief. If the accused swallowed the host or wine without incident, it was interpreted as a sign of divine approval, a testament to their innocence. Their ability to partake in this sacred act without any adverse reaction was seen as evidence of their purity, their worthiness before God. Their body, it was believed, had been deemed worthy of receiving the sacred elements. However, if the accused experienced any difficulty in swallowing the consecrated elements, if they choked, vomited, or suffered any adverse reaction, it was interpreted as a clear sign of divine judgment, a rejection by the sacred body of Christ. Their inability to consume the host or wine without discomfort was seen as a manifestation of their guilt, their unworthiness in the eyes of God. Their body, it was believed, had been deemed unworthy of receiving the sacred elements, a clear indication of their inner corruption. This ordeal was not without its potential for manipulation and injustice. The priest, as the administrator of the ritual, held considerable power, their interpretation of the results carrying immense weight. A biased priest could easily influence the outcome, subtly suggesting a reaction or exaggerating a minor discomfort to ensure a guilty verdict. The subjective nature of the ordeal, coupled with the priest's significant influence, rendered it vulnerable to abuse and manipulation. Moreover, the ordeal of the Eucharist relied on the belief system of the time, a society deeply intertwined with religious superstition and a lack of objective legal processes. The lack of verifiable evidence, the reliance on divine intervention, and the potential for manipulation rendered this trial method profoundly flawed by modern standards. The ordeal of the Eucharist stands as a stark reminder of the stark contrast between medieval and modern conceptions of justice, a testament to the evolution of legal systems and our understanding of fairness and impartiality. The hushed reverence of the medieval church, the flickering candlelight, the silent anticipation, the image of the accused receiving the consecrated host, their fate hanging in the balance. remains a potent symbol of the bizarre and often unjust methods employed in medieval justice. The ordeal of the Eucharist, a terrifying blend of religious ritual and legal process, serves as a chilling reminder of a time when divine judgment was believed to determine guilt or innocence, and the boundaries between faith and justice were blurred beyond recognition. The lingering silence after the consumption of the sacred elements, the unspoken verdict hanging heavy in the air. This is the lasting impression of this unique and unsettling medieval trial. Now, let us leave the realm of divine intervention and fiery ordeals and step into the more grounded, yet equally intriguing world of the medieval jury. Unlike the dramatic spectacle of trial by fire or the terrifying uncertainty of the Eucharist ordeal, the jury system offered a different path to justice, one rooted in community and social standing. It was a system where the fate of the accused rested not in the hands of God, but in the judgment of their neighbors. Imagine a village square, perhaps nestled within a valley, the air alive with the sounds of everyday life, the bleating of sheep, the distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer, the chatter of villagers going about their daily routines. At the heart of this scene, a makeshift court has been assembled. Rough-hewn benches are arranged in a circle, facing a central space where the accused stands, their eyes darting nervously among the faces of their accusers and potential jurors. These jurors are not impartial judges trained in the intricacies of law, but ordinary people, neighbors, friends, acquaintances, and sometimes even enemies, drawn from the very fabric of the community. The process began with the presentation of the case. Unlike the formalized procedures of modern courts, the evidence presented was often a patchwork of hearsay, eyewitness accounts, and sometimes even outright speculation. Formal legal representation was largely absent. The accused often had to plead their own case, relying on their ability to persuade the jury of their innocence. The absence of formal legal proceedings left a considerable amount of room for personal biases and prejudices to influence the proceedings. The jury itself, composed of individuals from the local community, brought with them their own preconceived notions, their own relationships with the accused, and their own interpretations of the presented evidence. Their understanding of the law was limited to local customs and traditions, passed down through generations, rather than codified legal principles. The verdict, therefore, was not simply a judgment based on legal evidence, but a reflection of the social dynamics and power structures within the community. The deliberation process was informal and often intensely subjective. There were no formal rules of evidence, no guidelines for discussion, no secret ballots. The jurors would gather together, perhaps in a nearby tavern or the village elder's home, and discuss the case amongst themselves. Their conversations would be a blend of personal opinions, community gossip, and interpretations of the presented evidence. The influence of social standing and reputation was undeniable. A respected member of the community, a landowner, or a church official would likely hold more sway than a humble peasant or an outsider. The verdict, therefore, was often a reflection of the social hierarchy and the prevailing power dynamics within the village. Consider the implications of such a system. For an individual of low social standing, facing accusations from powerful members of the community, the chances of a fair trial were significantly diminished. Their reputation, already potentially tarnished, would likely be held against them, regardless of the actual evidence. The jury, composed of their neighbors, would be privy to their personal lives, their past actions, and any community gossip surrounding them, all of which could influence their judgment. In contrast, an individual of high social standing, with a reputation for respectability and influence, would likely enjoy a significant advantage. Their good standing within the community, their established connections, and their ability to sway public opinion could significantly impact the jury's deliberations. Their social standing, rather than the evidence itself, might become the deciding factor in their fate. The verdict, reached through this informal and often subjective process, was final. There was no appeal process, no opportunity to challenge the judgment. The outcome, shaped by the social dynamics and power structures of the village, would irrevocably alter the life of the accused. It is a stark reminder of how justice, even in its most rudimentary form, can be intertwined with social status, personal biases, and the inherent inequalities of a hierarchical society. The jury of neighbors, seemingly simple and straightforward, reveals a complex interplay of social influence, community dynamics, and the limitations of justice in a world without formalized legal frameworks. The quiet murmur of their deliberations, the weight of their collective judgment. This was the essence of justice, or perhaps the illusion thereof, in medieval times. Now, let us journey to a different corner of the medieval courtroom, where the weight of justice rested not on burning embers or boiling water, but on the solemnity of an oath. Trial by oath, a method less physically demanding than its counterparts, relied on the power of sworn testimony and the integrity of the individual. It was a system where the accused fate hinged on their word, their credibility, and the support they could garner from their community. Imagine the scene: a hushed courtroom, perhaps a dimly lit hall within a castle or a simple church. The air is thick with anticipation as the accused stands before the assembled judges or local officials. The accusation hangs heavy in the air, a shadow cast upon their reputation and their future. But unlike the fiery ordeals, here there is no physical test, no reliance on divine intervention to prove innocence. Instead, the accused is called upon to swear an oath of innocence, a solemn vow before God and the assembled community. The oath itself was a powerful statement, a declaration of truthfulness under the weight of religious sanction. To swear falsely was not merely to lie. It was to incur the wrath of God, a consequence far more dire than any earthly punishment. The words spoken were carefully chosen, a precise formula designed to invoke the divine authority and leave no room for ambiguity. The accused would raise their hand, their gaze fixed upon a holy symbol, perhaps a crucifix or a venerated relic, and solemnly declare their innocence. However, the simple act of swearing an oath wasn't always sufficient. The credibility of the accused played a crucial role, and this is where the compurgators enter the picture. These were individuals from the community who were willing to vouch for the accused's character and honesty. They were essentially character witnesses, individuals chosen for their social standing, reputation, and perceived piety within their community. Their willingness to swear oaths supporting the accused's innocence served as a form of corroboration, bolstering the accused's own testimony. The number of compurgators required varied, depending on the severity of the accusation and the social standing of the accused. A person of high social standing might need only a few compurgators to support their oath, while someone of lower standing might require a larger number to lend sufficient credibility to their claim. The selection process itself was significant, reflecting the social dynamics and power structures within the community. The choice of compurgators wasn't merely a matter of selecting friends or acquaintances. It was a strategic maneuver, a demonstration of the accused's connections and social standing. The compurgators, standing alongside the accused, would then swear their own oaths, affirming their belief in the accused's innocence. Their oaths weren't simply expressions of opinion. They carried the weight of legal and religious significance. To swear falsely as a compurgator was to incur the same divine wrath as the accused, a risk that only those genuinely believing in the accused's innocence would undertake. The combined oaths of the accused and their compurgators formed a powerful testament, a collective assertion of truth that held significant weight in the medieval legal system. The trial by oath, therefore, wasn't merely a matter of individual testimony. It was a community affair, a collective affirmation or denial of truth. It was a system that underscored the importance of reputation, social connections, and the power of community support in the determination of guilt or innocence. The outcome depended not solely on the veracity of the accused's claim, but also on the credibility of those who stood beside them. Their words and oaths weaving a tapestry of belief that would determine the accused's fate. The quiet solemnity of the oaths, the weight of collective effort. Let us now delve deeper into the fascinating and often perplexing world of medieval justice. focusing on a method that relied less on divine intervention and more on the intricate web of social connections and reputation. Compurgation. Unlike the dramatic ordeals we've explored, compurgation was a quieter, more subtle process, yet one that profoundly impacted the lives of those accused. It wasn't a trial in the modern sense, but rather a testament to the power of community, social standing, and the weight of collective testimony. Imagine a village square, bathed in the soft glow of a late afternoon sun. A hushed expectancy hangs in the air as the accused, perhaps a farmer accused of theft or a merchant accused of fraud, stands before the assembled villagers. The accusation is grave, but the method of determining guilt or innocence is unlike any we've encountered thus far. There will be no boiling water, no fiery trial. Instead, the accused's fate will be decided not by supernatural intervention, but by the testimony of their peers, by the strength of their social connections, and by the reputation they've cultivated within their community. This is the heart of compurgation, a system where the accused character, their standing within the community, is the central element of the trial. The accused doesn't stand alone. They're surrounded by compurgators, individuals chosen for their social standing, reputation, and unwavering belief in the accused's innocence. These were not simply friends or family. They were individuals whose word carried significant weight within the community, whose testimony held sway in the eyes of the assembled judges or local officials. The selection of compurgators was a critical aspect of the process, a reflection of the accused's social standing and the strength of their connections. A person of high social standing, a respected member of the community, would naturally attract more credible compurgators, individuals whose oaths would carry greater weight. Their testimony would be seen as more reliable, their belief in the accused's innocence more convincing. In contrast, an individual of lower standing, someone with fewer social connections, might struggle to find enough credible compurgators, potentially jeopardizing their chances of acquittal. This inherent bias, based on social standing, is a crucial element to understand when considering compurgation's role in medieval justice. Once the compurgators were selected, the process began. Each compurgator, in turn, would swear a solemn oath, affirming their belief in the accused's innocence. These oaths weren't casual pronouncements. They were carefully worded statements, imbued with religious significance, invoking the divine wrath that would befall them if they swore falsely. The power of these oaths lay not only in their religious implications, but also in the social weight carried by those who swore them. A false oath would not only incur divine retribution, but would also irrevocably damage the compurgator's reputation within the community, a price few would willingly pay. The number of compurgators required varied, depending on the severity of the accusation and the social standing of the accused. More serious accusations naturally demanded a greater number of compurgators, whose combined oaths would bolster the accused's claim of innocence. The process, therefore, was a complex dance of social dynamics, reputation, and religious belief, a system where the accused's fate was interwoven with the fabric of their community. The quiet solemnity of the oaths, the weight of collective affirmation, the subtle interplay of social dynamics. These were the elements that defined this unique approach to medieval justice. Compurgation, therefore, reveals a justice system deeply intertwined with social structures and community dynamics. It wasn't a system based on objective evidence or codified laws in the modern sense, but rather a reflection of the intricate web of relationships and reputations within medieval society. The accused's social standing, the strength of their connections, and the credibility of their compurgators. These factors played a crucial role in determining their fate. It was a system where community judgment held significant weight, where reputation could be a shield or a sword, and where the collective affirmation of innocence or guilt held the power to shape the course of a life. The hushed solemnity of the oaths, the weight of collective testimony, the subtle interplay of social connections. These are the elements that paint a vivid picture of compurgation's unique place in the history of medieval justice. The system, though vastly different from modern legal practices, offers a fascinating insight into the values and social dynamics of medieval society. It highlights the importance of community, reputation, and the power of collective testimony in a world where justice often relied less on objective evidence and more on the intricate tapestry of social relationships. Now, let's turn our attention to a rather unique instrument of medieval justice, one that, while seemingly less severe than trial by fire or water, served a powerful purpose of social control and public shaming: the ducking stool. Unlike the ordeals we've discussed, the ducking stool wasn't intended to determine guilt or innocence through divine intervention. Instead, it was a tool used primarily to address minor offenses, particularly those committed by women, and to enforce a particular kind of social order. Picture this: a village green, perhaps near a river or a pond, the air thick with the murmur of anticipation. At the center of this scene sits the ducking stool, a simple wooden chair attached to a long beam that extends over the water. It's a rather crude device, yet its purpose was clear: to humiliate and publicly chastise those deemed to have transgressed social norms. The offenses were often minor, involving gossip, petty theft, or acts deemed disruptive to the established order. It was a method of justice, if you will, aimed not at determining objective guilt, but at regulating behavior and maintaining social harmony, particularly within the female population of the village. The targets of this peculiar form of punishment were mostly women, accused of gossiping, nagging, or other behaviors deemed disruptive to the peace of the community. The accusations themselves were often subjective, reflecting the prevailing social norms and expectations of the time. While serious crimes were handled through other, often more brutal, methods, the ducking stool served as a mechanism to address less serious transgressions, to curb unruly behavior, and to maintain the delicate balance of social order within the village. The process itself was a public spectacle designed to deter future misconduct and to reinforce societal norms. The accused woman, often bound to the ducking stool, would be paraded through the village, her face flushed with shame and humiliation. The public nature of the punishment was a crucial element, designed to shame the individual and to serve as a warning to others. It was a powerful display of community power, a reminder of the consequences of stepping outside the boundaries of acceptable behavior. The immersion in the water itself wasn't intended to be life-threatening, though the experience would undoubtedly have been unpleasant. The aim was not to inflict serious physical harm, but rather to inflict psychological and social damage, to publicly humiliate and shame the individual, thereby deterring future transgressions. The coldness of the water, the feeling of being submerged, the public exposure. These were all elements designed to reinforce the power of the community and to uphold the established social order. The ducking stool, therefore, was a fascinating hybrid of social control and public spectacle. It wasn't a method of determining guilt or innocence in a traditional sense, but rather a mechanism for enforcing social norms and maintaining a particular kind of community order. The humiliation, the public display, the chilling immersion. These elements combine to create a powerful deterrent, a reminder of the consequences of deviating from the established social expectations. It's important to note that the ducking stool wasn't uniformly applied across all of medieval society. Its use varied depending on local customs, social structures, and the specific offenses being addressed. Yet, its prevalence in many communities highlights the importance of social control, the role of public shaming, and the unique ways in which medieval societies sought to maintain order and enforce their norms. The image of the ducking stool, a simple wooden chair suspended over water, evokes a sense of both the bizarre and the deeply human aspects of medieval justice, reminding us of the varied ways in which communities sought to regulate behavior and maintain social harmony. The ducking stool stands in stark contrast to the more violent ordeals we've examined. It wasn't about determining guilt through divine intervention or inflicting physical pain. It was about social control, about publicly shaming individuals to enforce societal norms. It was a chilling reminder of the ways in which medieval society sought to maintain order, highlighting the complex interplay between justice, social pressure, and the power of public humiliation. The image of the woman, bound to the chair, slowly descending into the water, serves as a powerful symbol of the limitations placed on women in medieval society and the unique ways in which their behavior was regulated. As we continue our exploration of medieval justice, we will find that the ducking stool, while seemingly less severe than other methods, hold a significant place in the story of how medieval societies dealt with deviance and maintained social order. The subtle cruelty of its social power, the pervasive humiliation, and the clear intent to control all reveal a system that, though vastly different from our own, remains deeply fascinating and revealing. Now, let's delve into a particularly unsettling aspect of medieval witch hunts: the practice of witch pricking. Unlike the ordeals we've previously explored, which often involved dramatic displays of physical endurance, witch pricking was a more intimate, even invasive, examination of the suspected witch's body. It was a method born of superstition, a desperate attempt to find tangible evidence where none truly existed. Imagine a dimly lit room, perhaps a stark chamber within a village house or a more formal setting in a magistrate's office. A woman, accused of witchcraft, sits nervously, her eyes darting around the room, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. The air is thick with apprehension, the silence broken only by the occasional cough or the creak of a floorboard. The atmosphere is one of hushed anticipation, a tense mixture of fear and morbid curiosity. The witch pricker, often a local official or a self-proclaimed expert, approaches the accused woman. This individual, cloaked in an aura of authority and knowledge, however dubious, carries a long, slender needle or pin. This seemingly simple instrument would become the key to unlocking, or rather, creating the truth. The belief underpinning this practice was that witches possessed insensible spots on their bodies, areas where they felt no pain, and the discovery of such a spot would serve as irrefutable proof of their guilt. The examination itself was a grueling ordeal, both physically and psychologically. The witch pricker would systematically probe the accused woman's body, meticulously examining every inch of her skin. The needle would pierce the flesh again and again, seeking that elusive, insensible area. The process was agonizing, not only because of the physical pain, but also because of the intense humiliation and the sheer terror of the unknown. Each prick was a fresh reminder of the accusations levied against her, a constant threat of condemnation and the terrible consequences that followed. The absence of pain in a particular spot, however, was not a reliable indicator of guilt or innocence. The human body is complex. Its sensitivity varies from person to person and even from area to area on the same body. Nerves are not uniformly distributed, and the perception of pain is subjective and influenced by a multitude of factors, including anxiety, stress, and even the individual's resilience to pain. The very notion of an insensible spot, therefore, was a flawed premise upon which to base a judgment of guilt or innocence. Yet, in the context of medieval society, steeped as it was in superstition and a deep-seated fear of the unknown, the witch pricker's findings held immense weight. The act of pricking itself, the public display of the examination, and the supposed discovery of an insensible spot all served to reinforce the belief in witchcraft and to validate the accusations against the accused. It was a powerful ritual, a dramatic performance that solidified the community's conviction and ensured the condemnation of the suspected witch. The practice of witch pricking, therefore, reveals a chilling intersection of superstition, fear, and the abuse of power. It was a method of proof that relied not on evidence or reason, but on the subjective interpretation of a physical examination, influenced by the prevailing beliefs and prejudices of the time. The perceived absence of pain in a particular area was enough to condemn a woman to death, a stark example of how easily fear and superstition could override reason and justice. The witch pricker, armed with a simple needle, wielded immense power, shaping the course of lives and reinforcing the anxieties of an era gripped by the fear of witchcraft. As we reflect on this disturbing practice, we can appreciate the stark contrast between the medieval understanding of justice and our own. The witch pricking method, based entirely on superstition and flawed interpretations of the human body, stands as a stark reminder of the dangers of relying on unfounded beliefs and the vulnerability of individuals when faced with such irrational accusations. The image of the needle piercing the skin, the search for that elusive, insensible spot, serves as a powerful metaphor for the injustice and the profound suffering endured by those accused of witchcraft during the medieval period. The chilling legacy of witch pricking underscores the importance of critical thinking, the need for evidence-based reasoning, and the enduring struggle to ensure that justice is tempered with mercy and informed by reason. It's a sobering reminder of the fragility of justice when superstition reigns supreme. Let us now turn our attention to another chilling trial by ordeal prevalent in the medieval era, the water float test. Unlike the trial by fire, which involved the searing heat of flames, or the trial by hot iron, where the accused bore the intense heat of a heated metal bar, the water float test took place in the cold, unforgiving embrace of water. This method, however, was no less terrifying or unjust. Imagine a scene unfolding on a crisp autumn morning beside a still, dark pond or river. A hushed crowd gathers, their faces etched with a mixture of apprehension and morbid curiosity. At the center of this somber gathering stands a woman, accused of witchcraft. Her eyes, wide with fear, scan the faces of the onlookers, searching for a glimmer of sympathy, a sign of hope in the sea of judgmental gazes. The air is thick with an unspoken tension, a palpable sense of anticipation hanging heavy in the crisp morning air. The water float test, also known as the swimming test or trial by water, was rooted in a complex tapestry of beliefs and superstitions. The underlying principle was that water, a sacred and life-giving element, would reject the impure, the unholy. It was believed that an innocent person, blessed by divine grace, would sink beneath the surface, while a guilty witch, rejected by the sacred waters, would float. This belief system, a blend of religious dogma and folk superstition, formed the basis of this cruel and often fatal judgment. The actual procedure varied somewhat from region to region, but the fundamental principle remained consistent. The accused would be stripped of their clothing, their hands bound behind their back, and then thrown into the water. The onlookers, their eyes fixated on the struggling figure in the water, waited with bated breath to see whether the accused would sink or float. This was not a matter of swimming ability. Even a strong swimmer would be bound and constrained, their movements restricted. The tension during the trial was almost unbearable. Every ripple on the water's surface, every fleeting glimpse of the accused's struggle, was interpreted as a sign, a message from the divine. The crowd watched with rapt attention, their collective breath held captive in anticipation of the verdict. A sinking body was interpreted as a sign of innocence, the sacred water accepting the pure soul. But if the body floated, it was seen as undeniable proof of guilt, a testament to the unholy nature of the accused. The outcome, life or death, hung precariously in the balance, determined not by evidence or reason, but by the capricious whims of the elements. The water float test, however, was far from a reliable indicator of guilt or innocence. The physical properties of water, buoyancy, and density are governed by scientific principles, not divine intervention. A person's body composition, clothing, and even the presence of air pockets within their clothing could influence whether they sink or float. The very notion that water could discern the purity of a soul was a profound misconception, a dangerous distortion of natural laws. Yet in the medieval world, where superstition held sway and reason was often overshadowed by fear, the water float test held considerable weight, shaping the course of lives and condemning innocent people to death. This method, therefore, underscores the deep-seated fear of witchcraft and the extent to which superstition could override evidence-based reasoning. The image of a bound woman struggling in the cold water, her fate hanging in the balance, remains a chilling testament to the injustice and cruelty of this trial by ordeal. It highlights the vulnerability of individuals in a society where fear and superstition reign supreme. The water float test, like other medieval ordeals, serves as a somber reminder of the importance of critical thinking, the need for evidence-based justice, and the enduring struggle to ensure that reason and compassion prevail over fear and superstition. The chilling legacy of such practices serves as a cautionary tale, a reminder of the dangers of unchecked power and the importance of upholding the principles of due process and fair judgment in our own time. The image of the still water reflecting the sky, the silent anticipation of the crowd, and the struggle of the accused, all combine to create a lasting impression of the injustice and the profound suffering endured during this dark chapter of history. Now, let us journey into a realm of medieval justice that transcends the human sphere entirely, the trial of animals. This peculiar practice, while seemingly fantastical, was a very real aspect of medieval legal systems, revealing a fascinating blend of anthropomorphism, religious beliefs, and a society grappling with the forces of nature. These trials weren't about prosecuting animals for malicious intent in the modern sense. Rather, they were symbolic rituals aimed at restoring balance and order in a world where the line between the human and natural realms was often blurred. Imagine a village square, not bustling with merchants and townsfolk, but instead hushed and expectant. The air, thick with the scent of damp earth and hay, carries the nervous bleating of a goat tethered to a post. This is no ordinary goat. It stands accused of a serious crime, the destruction of crops. The villagers, their faces etched with a solemn gravity, gather around, their hushed whispers adding to the unusual solemnity of the occasion. This is not a trial in the modern sense, with lawyers and judges. This is a trial by ordeal, a ritualistic attempt to ascertain the goat's guilt or innocence, not through evidence, but through divine intervention. These trials weren't confined to goats. Pigs, cattle, insects, and even inanimate objects were sometimes brought before a medieval court. The accusations varied, ranging from crop destruction and property damage to more serious offenses like murder. These were not frivolous proceedings. They involved formal procedures, including the appointment of a legal representative for the animal, often a child, the presentation of evidence, and the delivery of a verdict. The proceedings, though bizarre by modern standards, reflected the medieval worldview, where the natural world was viewed as interconnected and responsive to human actions. One particularly well-documented example comes from the French town of Autun in 1457. A pig was accused of murdering a child. The pig, seemingly the prime suspect, was brought before the court. A lawyer was appointed to defend the pig's interests, while the accusations were presented with a formality that would be striking to a modern observer. The seriousness with which these proceedings were conducted speaks volumes about the medieval society's deep-seated beliefs and the extent to which the human and animal worlds intersected in their worldview. The pig, naturally, could not offer a defense. Its fate lay in the hands of the court, its guilt or innocence determined not by evidence, but by a seemingly arbitrary process. The symbolic aspects of these trials are crucial to understanding their significance. The trials served as a way for communities to grapple with unpredictable events, such as crop failures or accidents. By assigning blame to an animal, the community could find a scapegoat, channeling their fear and frustration into a tangible target. The ritualistic nature of the trials also served a social function, reinforcing community bonds and solidifying social hierarchies. The formal proceedings, though seemingly absurd, provided a framework for collective action and the symbolic resolution of conflict. In many instances, the trial of an animal was less about determining guilt and more about performing a ritualistic act of purification or appeasement. The outcome, whether the animal was acquitted or condemned, was often less important than the process itself. The act of bringing the animal to court, assigning it a lawyer, and conducting a formal hearing served to restore balance and order within the community. The trials served as a mechanism for communal catharsis, a symbolic way to address anxieties and uncertainties within a world deeply influenced by superstition and a belief in divine intervention. The practice of animal trials offers a fascinating glimpse into the medieval mindset, a world where the boundaries between the human and natural worlds were less defined than in our modern understanding. These trials, often viewed with amusement today, were serious events that reflected the unique challenges and beliefs of society grappling with the unpredictable forces of nature and the complexities of human existence. They were a potent reminder of the influence of superstition and the symbolic actions used to address anxieties and maintain social cohesion. These trials, though seemingly strange, serve as a potent reflection of a bygone era, demonstrating the varied and often unexpected ways that societies have attempted to make sense of the world around them. The image of the goat in the village square, the hushed whispers of the villagers, and the solemn gravity of the proceedings all combine to paint a vivid picture of a world vastly different from our own. The conclusion, then, is not simply that medieval justice was bizarre, but that it reflects a deeply different worldview, one shaped by religious beliefs, superstition, and a complex relationship with the natural world. The trial of animals, alongside the other ordeals we've explored, stands as a testament to this unique historical perspective. Let us now turn our attention to a seemingly simpler, yet equally intriguing method of medieval justice: the bread and cheese ordeal. Unlike the fiery trials by ordeal or the chilling submersions in water, this method relied less on physical endurance and more on a subtle observation of the accused's response to a sacred meal. It was a test not of physical strength, but of spiritual purity, a belief that divine intervention would manifest itself through the body's reaction to consecrated food. Picture a dimly lit courtroom, perhaps a humble village hall or a more imposing manor house. The air hangs heavy with anticipation. The accused, perhaps a suspected thief or a person accused of perjury, sits before a small table, their hands clasped tightly in their lap. Before them rests a simple meal, a piece of bread and a wedge of cheese. These are not ordinary provisions. They have been blessed by a priest, imbued with a sacred significance that transcends their mundane nature. This seemingly simple act elevates the meal into a powerful symbol, a conduit for divine judgment. The ritual itself was a carefully orchestrated affair. The bread and cheese, consecrated with prayer and ritual, were presented to the accused. The priest, or a designated official, would often intone a prayer, invoking divine justice and asking for a clear sign of the accused's truthfulness. The accused, under the watchful gaze of the assembled community, was then instructed to consume the blessed bread and cheese. The silence in the room would be profound, broken only by the occasional creak of a wooden chair or the rustling of cloth. The interpretation of the results was far from straightforward. It wasn't a simple matter of choking or vomiting to indicate guilt. The focus was on subtle signs, often based on the individual's physical and emotional responses to the sacred food. Any unusual reaction, such as difficulty swallowing, persistent nausea, or even a visible change in complexion, was meticulously observed and interpreted as a sign of divine judgment. A seemingly minor discomfort could be interpreted as a divine sign of guilt, while an uneventful consumption of the meal would often be seen as a testament to the accused's innocence. The ambiguity inherent in the bread and cheese test is striking. The lack of clear-cut criteria for interpretation made it a highly subjective procedure. The results, therefore, were heavily influenced by the biases and prejudices of those who observed the accused. A nervous disposition, a slight tremor in the hands, or even a momentary hesitation could be interpreted as signs of guilt, regardless of the actual truth. This subjective element highlights the inherent flaws and potential for injustice within this system of judgment. Consider the psychological pressure exerted on the accused. The knowledge that their very fate rested on the seemingly innocuous act of eating blessed bread and cheese must have been incredibly stressful. The weight of community judgment, coupled with the belief in divine retribution, could easily induce physical symptoms that were then misinterpreted as evidence of guilt. The inherent ambiguity of the test, combined with the immense psychological pressure, meant that the outcome was far from reliable. The bread and cheese test, like many medieval trial methods, reveals the deep-seated religious beliefs that permeated all aspects of medieval life. The belief in divine intervention and the power of consecrated objects played a central role in the administration of justice. The ritualistic nature of the ordeal, the sacred food, and the meticulous observation of the accused response all point to a society where faith and superstition played a dominant role in shaping perceptions of guilt and innocence. However, the test also exposes the significant limitations of this belief system. The lack of objective criteria, the subjective interpretation of results, and the immense psychological pressure on the accused all highlight the potential for miscarriages of justice. This method, while seemingly simple and less overtly cruel than some other ordeals, still represented a system of justice fraught with bias, ambiguity, and the ever-present risk of falsely convicting innocent individuals. The bread and cheese test, therefore, stands as a compelling example of medieval justice's blend of religious faith and human fallibility. It is a reminder of the profound influence of religious belief on the administration of justice and the potential for misinterpretations and injustices within systems that lack the objectivity and procedural safeguards of modern legal processes. It's a gentle reminder, perhaps, to appreciate the advancements in legal systems that have strived to replace superstition with evidence and fairness. The image of the accused, sitting before the simple meal, under the watchful eyes of the community, remains a powerful symbol of a time when justice was intertwined with faith and the interpretation of subtle signs. The soft crumbling of the bread, the quiet chew of the cheese, all become elements of a ritual, a silent prayer for divine intervention in the search for truth. Now, let us transport ourselves to a different corner of the medieval world, where disputes were settled not through fiery ordeals or sacred meals, but through a surprisingly sophisticated, and sometimes violent, form of verbal combat, the insult duel. Imagine a sun-drenched marketplace, the air alive with the chatter of merchants and the bleating of sheep. Suddenly, a hush falls over the crowd as two figures, their faces etched with anger and resentment, stand facing each other, ready to engage in a battle of wits, a war of words, a duel of insults. Unlike the physical ordeals we've explored, the insult duel was a contest of verbal dexterity, a test of one's ability to craft the most cutting, the most humiliating, the most devastating insult. It was a performance, a theatrical display of wit and aggression, where the goal was not merely to offend but to utterly dismantle the opponent's reputation, to strip them of their honor, and to leave them exposed and vulnerable. The rules, if they can be called that, were often unwritten, varying from region to region and community to community. Sometimes, there were mediators or judges, individuals chosen by mutual agreement or appointed by local authorities. Their role was not to determine the truth or falsehood of the claims, but rather to oversee the duel, to ensure that the rules, however loosely defined, were adhered to, and to prevent the contest from escalating into uncontrolled violence. The duel itself was a carefully choreographed dance of words. Each participant, armed with their arsenal of insults and clever retorts, would try to outwit and outmaneuver their opponent. The insults were rarely straightforward accusations. Instead, they were often laced with satire, irony, and subtle jabs at the opponent's character, family, or social standing. The goal was not simply to hurt, but to humiliate, to expose flaws and weaknesses, to strip away the veneer of respectability and leave the opponent exposed to the ridicule and judgment of the onlookers. The social dynamics of the insult duel were complex and fascinating. Honor, reputation, and social standing were at stake. A victory in an insult duel could significantly enhance one's reputation, while a defeat could lead to social ostracism and loss of status. The duel was, therefore, not just a matter of personal satisfaction, but a crucial element in maintaining social order and upholding the delicate balance of power within the community. The onlookers played a vital role, their laughter, gasps, and murmurs shaping the momentum of the contest. Their judgment, their appraisal of the insults, and their perception of who had won or lost held significant social weight. The escalation from verbal sparring to physical confrontation was a common occurrence. If one participant felt that their opponent had crossed a line, or if the insults became too personally damaging, the verbal duel could quickly descend into a physical brawl. The line between words and violence was often blurred, the transition seamless and almost inevitable. The judges, if present, would attempt to intervene, but their authority was often limited, their ability to control the passions of the duelists severely tested. The insult duel, therefore, was a unique blend of verbal artistry and physical aggression. It was a reflection of a society where honor and reputation were paramount, where social standing was fragile and easily threatened, and where the resolution of disputes could involve a complex interplay of words, gestures, and potential violence. The very act of engaging in an insult duel spoke volumes about the social dynamics of the time, revealing the importance of public opinion, the delicate balance of power within communities, and the ever-present possibility of physical conflict arising from the clash of egos and the pursuit of honor. The image of two figures facing each other in a marketplace, their words sharp as knives, their faces flushed with anger and determination, stands as a potent symbol of this unique form of medieval conflict resolution. The crowd, a silent observer and judge, their reactions shaping the course of the duel, completes the picture, underscoring the central role of social dynamics and public opinion in shaping the outcome of these fascinating and often violent encounters. The gentle murmur of the crowd, the sharp sting of a well-placed insult, the sudden eruption of violence. These are the elements of a story that speaks volumes about the complexities of medieval justice and the vital role of honor and reputation in a society where the line between words and blows was often perilously thin. The echo of their voices, the weight of their words, the potential for violence. These are the lasting impressions of the insult duel. Now, let's consider a trial that tested not strength or resilience to pain, but the limits of human endurance in a different realm entirely. The ordeal of the cross. Imagine a hushed church, the air thick with incense and the weight of expectation. Two figures stand before the altar, their faces pale and drawn, their bodies trembling with a mixture of fear and determination. One is the accused, the other the accuser, each convinced of their own righteousness, each praying for divine intervention to prove their case. This wasn't a trial of physical prowess, like the fiery ordeals or the brutal tests of water. Instead, the ordeal of the cross was a contest of endurance, a test of willpower and faith. The accused and the accuser, standing before the assembled community, would extend their arms, forming the shape of a cross. This posture, a symbolic representation of Christ's sacrifice, was meant to be a direct appeal to divine judgment. The rules were simple, yet the implications were profound. The individuals would maintain this position, arms outstretched, until one of them faltered, until one of them could no longer bear the physical strain and drop their arms. The first to break, the first to succumb to the excruciating pain and fatigue, was declared guilty. The weight of the judgment, the weight of their extended arms, pressed down not just on their physical bodies, but on their spirits. The ordeal of the cross was not merely a test of physical stamina. It was a profound psychological challenge. The sustained physical strain, the intense pressure on muscles and joints, was only one aspect of the ordeal. The psychological torment, the crushing weight of expectation, the fear of divine judgment, and the knowledge that the outcome of the trial rested not on evidence or testimony, but on one's ability to endure, added layers of complexity to this bizarre method of justice. The scene itself would have been intensely dramatic. The silence of the church, broken only by the occasional sigh or groan, would have amplified the tension. The faces of the onlookers, a mixture of anticipation, pity, and perhaps even morbid curiosity, would have reflected the gravity of the moment. The air would have been heavy with the scent of incense, the weight of expectation, the silent prayers of those present. The physical toll was considerable. Maintaining the position of the cross, with arms held outstretched, for any length of time is incredibly difficult. The arms would quickly become numb, the muscles would ache and burn, and the sheer physical exhaustion would be almost unbearable. Yet, it was not just the physical pain that the participants had to endure. The psychological pressure was equally, if not more, intense. The weight of the accusation, the knowledge that their fate hung in the balance, the fear of divine retribution. These factors would have contributed to the immense psychological strain. The ordeal of the cross reveals much about the medieval mindset. It highlights the profound belief in divine intervention, the idea that God would reveal the truth through a test of physical and psychological endurance. It also reflects the limited understanding of human physiology and psychology, the lack of sophisticated methods for determining guilt or innocence. The ordeal was a far cry from the nuanced legal processes of modern justice systems. The ordeal of the cross is a grim reminder of the harsh realities of medieval justice, where the line between divine judgment and human suffering was often blurred. It was a trial that tested not only the physical endurance, but also the psychological resilience of the accused and the accuser, a stark demonstration of the limitations and the cruelties of medieval legal practices. The image of outstretched arms, trembling with exhaustion and fear, remains a haunting symbol of this peculiar and profoundly unsettling method of determining guilt or innocence. The weight of the cross, both literal and metaphorical, was a burden that could crush the spirit as readily as it tested the body. The silent prayers, the straining muscles, the eventual collapse, these are the elements that compose a story of faith, endurance, and the peculiar workings of medieval justice. Now, let us delve into a trial method that relied not on strength or endurance, but on the supposed reactions of the deceased, the trial by the corpse. Imagine a hushed scene, perhaps in a body shrouded in simple linen, lies still, the stillness broken only by the soft breaths of the gathered villagers. At the center of attention stands the accused, their face a mask of apprehension, their hands trembling slightly. The trial by the corpse was rooted in a deeply superstitious belief in the power of the dead to reveal the truth. It was believed that a corpse, still imbued with a faint echo of life's essence, could react to the presence of the guilty. The logic, or rather, the superstition, was that the body of the victim, somehow aware of its own demise, would react in the presence of its murderer. This reaction, it was believed, would be a sign of divine intervention, a clear indication of guilt. The accused, in this eerie ritual, was required to touch the corpse. The act itself would have been laden with symbolic weight, a visceral confrontation with death and the consequences of one's actions. The very act of touching the lifeless body, cold and still, must have been profoundly unsettling. The air would have been heavy with the scent of decay, a stark reminder of mortality and the finality of death. The observers, a hushed and expectant crowd, would have watched intently, their eyes glued to the accused and the corpse. They were seeking any sign, however subtle, any twitch, any shudder, any sign that the body was reacting to the presence of the guilty party. The slightest movement, a tremor, a change in the pallor of the skin, could be interpreted as a sign of the corpse's disapproval, a testament to the accused's guilt. The belief that a corpse could reveal the truth highlights the profound connection between the living and the dead in medieval society. Death was not seen as a clean break, but rather as a transition, a continuation of the individual's essence in a different form. The corpse, therefore, was not merely a lifeless body, but a vessel that could still communicate with the living, that could still express its silent judgment. The trial by the corpse was a far cry from the objective and evidence-based methods of modern justice. It was a practice deeply rooted in superstition and fear, a reflection of a worldview where the boundary between the living and the dead was fluid, where divine intervention was believed to play a role in earthly affairs. The lack of objective evidence, the reliance on subjective interpretations of subtle reactions, renders this practice profoundly unsettling to the modern mind. Imagine the accused, standing before the silent body, their hands trembling as they reach out to touch the cold flesh. The weight of the accusation, the fear of divine judgment, the silent judgment of the watching crowd. All these factors would have added to the psychological pressure. The scene must have been fraught with tension, a mixture of fear, superstition, and a desperate hope for divine intervention to reveal the truth. The trial by the corpse is a chilling reminder of the bizarre and often cruel methods of justice employed in the medieval world. It underscores the power of superstition and the limitations of understanding in a time when religious beliefs and folk traditions significantly influence legal processes. The image of the accused touching the lifeless body, the hushed anticipation of the onlookers, the subtle movements interpreted as signs of divine judgment. All these elements combine to create a scene both haunting and deeply unsettling. The trial by the corpse stands as a testament to a world where the line between faith, superstition, and justice was often blurred, leaving us with a profound understanding of the complexities and contradictions of medieval justice. The cold touch of the corpse, the silent judgment of the dead, the hushed whispers of the onlookers. These are the elements that compose a story of fear, superstition, and the peculiar workings of medieval justice. The silent testament of the deceased, the trembling hands of the accused, the expectant silence of the crowd. These are the ingredients of a narrative that speaks volumes about the medieval worldview and its unique approach to justice. Now, let us consider a trial that relied not on physical strength or the supposed reactions of the deceased, but on the power of consecrated water. The trial by holy water. Picture this: a hushed church, perhaps in the late afternoon light filtering through stained glass windows, casting an ethereal glow upon the scene. The air is thick with incense, the scent mingling with the dampness of the ancient stone walls. At the center stand the accused, their eyes downcast, their hands clasped tightly together. A priest, his face etched with solemnity, hold a vessel of holy water, a symbol of divine purity and judgment. The trial by holy water was a method of determining guilt or innocence that rested on the belief in the inherent power of consecrated water to react to the presence of evil or impurity. It was thought that holy water, blessed and sanctified by the Church, possessed a special ability to discern truth from falsehood, to detect the presence of guilt within the accused. This belief, deeply rooted in the religious worldview of the medieval period, provided the foundation for this unusual legal procedure. The logic, steeped in religious faith, was that the sacred water would react, perhaps by bubbling or refusing to touch the skin, in the presence of someone touched by sin or guilt. The ritual itself would have been a solemn affair, a stark contrast to the more violent ordeals involving fire or hot iron. The accused would be presented with the holy water, often in a simple silver or pewter vessel. The priest, acting as both judge and intermediary between the divine and the earthly, would then observe the accused's reaction as they approached the holy water. Any adverse reaction, any sign of discomfort, any hesitation or recoil would be interpreted as a sign of guilt, a testament to the accused's impurity in the eyes of God. The observers, likely a congregation of the accused peers and community members, would have watched intently, their eyes fixed on the accused and the holy water. The atmosphere would have been tense, a mixture of anticipation and apprehension. Every movement, every facial expression, every slight tremor in the accused's hand would have been scrutinized, analyzed, and interpreted as a possible indicator of guilt or innocence. The slightest sign of discomfort, a fleeting expression of anxiety, could be enough to seal the accused's fate. The trial by holy water offers a fascinating glimpse into the religious and superstitious beliefs that shaped medieval justice. The faith placed in the power of consecrated water, the belief in its ability to detect guilt, speaks volumes about the profound influence of religion on daily life and legal processes. The very act of using holy water as a means of determining guilt highlights the intertwining of religious faith and legal practice in medieval society. The ritual was not simply a legal procedure. It was a sacred act, a direct appeal to divine judgment. It is important to note that the interpretation of the results was subjective and open to bias. The priest, acting as the primary observer, held considerable power in determining the outcome of the trial. His interpretation of the accused reactions, influenced by his own beliefs and prejudices, could significantly impact the verdict. This subjective element, combined with the lack of objective evidence, raises serious questions about the fairness and reliability of this trial method. Imagine the accused standing before the priest, the holy water held aloft like a symbol of divine judgment. The weight of the accusation, the fear of divine retribution, the silent judgment of the watching congregation, all these factors would have combined to create immense psychological pressure. The scene would have been one of profound tension, a delicate balance between faith, fear, and the uncertain outcome of a trial by holy water. The trial by holy water stands as a testament to a time when religious beliefs and superstitious practices played a significant role in the administration of justice. It is a reminder of how deeply intertwined faith and law could be, and how subjective interpretations could influence the outcome of legal proceedings. The image of the accused approaching the holy water, the priest's watchful eyes, the hushed anticipation of the congregation. These are the elements that create a scene both fascinating and unsettling, a window into a world where the boundaries between faith and justice were often blurred. The shimmering surface of the holy water, the anxious gaze of the accused, the silent prayers of the onlookers. These details paint a vivid picture of a trial method as unique and intriguing as it was flawed. This method of seeking truth, based on faith and observation, stands as a testament to the complex interplay of religion and law in the medieval world. Let us now turn our attention to a method of determining guilt that relied not on physical ordeals, nor on the supposed reactions of inanimate objects, but on the sanctity of religious relics and the weight of a solemn oath, swearing on relics. Imagine the scene: a dimly lit church, perhaps the air thick with the scent of incense and beeswax, the quiet murmur of prayers hanging in the air. In the center of the room, upon a richly embroidered cloth, rests a collection of sacred relics, fragments of saints' bones, pieces of the true cross, perhaps even a sliver of the Virgin Mary's veil. These objects, imbued with profound religious significance, were believed to hold a special power, capable of detecting falsehood and punishing perjury. The accused, their face etched with anxiety, is brought forward. Before them lies the collection of sacred relics, each one a potent symbol of divine power and unwavering truth. The priest, or perhaps a higher church official, solemnly administers the oath. The accused is required to swear, upon the sanctity of these relics, the truthfulness of their claims. The act of swearing on relics was not merely a legal formality. It was a deeply religious act, a direct invocation of divine judgment. It was believed that false testimony, sworn upon sacred objects, would incur divine wrath, resulting in immediate punishment or future retribution. This practice stemmed from a deeply held belief in the power of sacred relics to detect falsehood and punish perjury. Relics, often fragments of saints' bodies or objects associated with holy figures, were considered to possess a divine aura, capable of discerning truth from falsehood. Swearing an oath upon these relics was therefore seen as an invocation of divine judgment, a direct appeal to the higher powers to punish those who dared to lie. The belief in the potency of these relics was widespread, deeply embedded within the religious fabric of medieval society. The social pressure associated with swearing on relics was considerable. The act of swearing on these sacred objects was not taken lightly. It was a profoundly serious matter, carrying enormous weight both within the community and within the individual's conscience. The fear of divine retribution, the potential for social ostracism, and the weight of one's own conscience combined to create immense pressure on the accused to tell the truth. A false oath, it was believed, would not only incur divine wrath, but would also severely damage the individual's reputation within their community. Imagine the accused, their hands trembling slightly as they reach out to touch the relics. Their eyes are downcast, their breathing shallow. The weight of the oath, the fear of divine punishment, the potential consequences of a lie, All these factors would have combined to create immense psychological pressure. The scene would have been one of profound solemnity, a mixture of fear, hope, and the uncertain outcome of the trial. The use of sacred relics in the process of swearing oaths highlights the significant role of religion in medieval society, particularly in the administration of justice. The intertwining of religious belief and legal practice is evident in the reliance on sacred objects to detect falsehood and ensure the truthfulness of testimony. The solemnity of the oath, the weight of the relics, and the fear of divine retribution all combined to create a powerful system of social control. It's important to consider that, while the act of swearing on relics was intended to ensure truthfulness, it was not without its flaws. The subjective nature of determining the validity of an oath, coupled with the potential for manipulation and coercion, raises questions about the fairness and reliability of this method. Nevertheless, swearing on relics served as a crucial element in the medieval legal system, reflecting the pervasive influence of religious belief on daily life and legal processes. The scene remains vivid. The hushed reverence of the church, the gleam of the relics under the candlelight, the accused's trembling hand, the priest's solemn words. This method of seeking truth, a blend of religious faith and social pressure, offers a fascinating glimpse into the complexities of medieval justice. It reveals a system intertwined with spiritual beliefs, where the weight of a sworn oath, amplified by the sacred nature of the relics, played a significant role in determining guilt or innocence. The image of the relics, radiant with a holy light, the silent weight of expectation, the hushed prayers. This is the essence of a trial by oath, a practice as complex and captivating as the era that birthed it. And so, the echoes of these ancient oaths, whispered through time, continue to remind us of the fascinating and intricate history of justice. The ordeal of the cross, a grueling test of endurance, wasn't a monolithic practice. Across the diverse landscape of medieval Europe, variations emerged, reflecting regional customs, evolving beliefs, and the subtle nuances of local legal traditions. While the core principle, maintaining an outstretched arm position until one party faltered, remained constant, the specifics of the ordeal were far from uniform. Let's delve into these fascinating regional variations, revealing the subtle differences that shaped this unique form of medieval justice. In some regions, the ordeal was conducted with a degree of formality, overseen by church officials and witnessed by a significant portion of the community. Here, the emphasis was on the religious aspect of the ordeal, with prayers and invocations intended to guide divine judgment. The accuser and the accused would stand before a priest or other religious authority, their arms outstretched, while prayers were chanted, hymns sung, and incense burned. This setting added a layer of solemnity and ritual to the ordeal, reinforcing its significance as a divinely sanctioned judgment. However, in other regions, the ordeal was less formal, perhaps conducted in a village square or other open space, with fewer religious overtones. Here, the focus shifted towards the physical endurance aspect of the ordeal, with less emphasis on the invocation of divine intervention. The setting might be simpler, less ornate, reflecting a more pragmatic approach to the ordeal, focusing on the physical capabilities of the participants rather than the religious context. The duration of the ordeal also varied. In some regions, the ordeal was relatively short, lasting only a few minutes, while in others, it could stretch on for hours, pushing the limits of human endurance. The length of the ordeal was often influenced by the severity of the crime and the perceived culpability of the accused. A more serious crime might necessitate a longer ordeal, reflecting the gravity of the situation and the need for a more thorough test of divine judgment. Furthermore, the positioning of the arms also differed. In some regions, the arms were held straight out to the sides, creating a classic cross shape. In others, the arms were raised above the head, creating a more vertical position. These variations, seemingly minor, could significantly impact the physical strain experienced by the participants, altering the dynamics of the ordeal and potentially influencing its outcome. The role of witnesses also varied. In some regions, the ordeal was witnessed by a large crowd, adding an element of public spectacle to the proceedings. This public nature served not only as a means of ensuring fairness, but also as a form of social control, reinforcing the community's adherence to the legal system and the authority of the ordeal. In other regions, the ordeal was a more private affair, witnessed only by a few select individuals, reducing the public spectacle and shifting the focus to a more intimate judgment. The consequences of failure also differed. In some regions, failure to withstand the ordeal resulted in immediate punishment, perhaps imprisonment, banishment, or even execution. In other regions, failure might lead to a less severe penalty, reflecting a more lenient approach to justice or a greater emphasis on the social rehabilitation of the accused. These regional variations in the ordeal of the cross reveal the complexities of medieval justice systems. The lack of uniformity highlights the decentralized nature of authority and the significant influence of local customs and beliefs on legal practices. The ordeal, far from being a standardized procedure, was a dynamic practice that adapted to the specific social and cultural contexts of different regions, revealing the rich tapestry of medieval legal traditions. The variations in setting, duration, positioning, witnesses, and consequences all contribute to a deeper understanding of this unique and challenging aspect of medieval life. Each variation, a subtle variation on a theme of physical and spiritual endurance, paints a more complete picture of the ordeal of the cross and its place within the broader context of medieval justice. Even after the often bizarre pronouncements of medieval trials, the pursuit of justice didn't always end with a verdict. The medieval world, deeply intertwined as it was with the fabric of its communities, recognized the importance of restoring social harmony after a dispute, regardless of the trial's outcome. Community reconciliation, a vital aspect of medieval justice, aimed not just at punishing wrongdoing, but at mending the fractured relationships within the village or town. This process, far from being a mere formality, played a crucial role in maintaining the social order and preventing the escalation of conflicts. Imagine a small medieval village, nestled amidst rolling hills and ancient forests. A dispute has arisen, perhaps a land boundary disagreement, a theft, or an accusation of witchcraft. The trial, conducted through one of the many unusual methods of the time, has reached its conclusion. But the story doesn't end there. The community, bound by shared history and interdependence, now embarks on the delicate process of reconciliation. The process wasn't always straightforward. If the trial resulted in a finding of guilt, the focus shifted towards restoring the victim's sense of security and well-being. This might involve restitution, where the offender was required to compensate the victim for their losses. The amount of restitution, carefully negotiated within the community, aimed to balance justice with the offender's ability to pay, preventing their complete ruin and further destabilizing the community. The emphasis was on restoring the balance within the community, not just punishing the individual. But restitution wasn't always enough. The social fabric of the community, woven together by relationships and shared experiences, could be easily torn by conflict. Therefore, community reconciliation often extended beyond material compensation. Public apologies, carefully worded and delivered with sincerity, played a crucial role in healing the wounds inflicted by the dispute. These apologies, witnessed by members of the community, were a powerful symbol of the offender's remorse and their willingness to mend the broken trust. Sometimes, the process involved mediation, where respected elders or religious figures intervened to facilitate communication and understanding between the parties involved. These mediators, respected for their wisdom and impartiality, helped to bridge the gap between the aggrieved party and the offender, fostering dialogue and promoting empathy. Their role was not to judge, but to guide, facilitating a process of mutual understanding and forgiveness. Furthermore, community reconciliation often involved participation from a wider circle of individuals. Neighbors, friends, and relatives of both the victim and the offender might be involved, offering support, guidance, and a sense of shared responsibility for restoring harmony. This collective involvement reinforced the communal nature of the process and emphasized the importance of shared responsibility in maintaining the social order. In cases where the trial's outcome was unclear or inconclusive, community reconciliation played an even more critical role. The uncertainty surrounding the verdict could exacerbate tensions, creating further divisions within the community. In such situations, the reconciliation process became a crucial tool for preventing the escalation of conflict and restoring a sense of stability. Mediation, apologies, and mutual agreements to avoid future disputes were essential in these situations. Even in cases where the accused was found innocent, reconciliation wasn't necessarily absent. The accusation itself could have created tensions and damaged relationships within the community. Therefore, efforts might be made to repair the social fabric, even if no formal punishment was imposed. The community's focus was on restoring harmony and preventing future conflicts, not just on punishing individual wrongdoers. The emphasis on community reconciliation in medieval justice systems highlights the importance of social cohesion and the interdependent nature of medieval society. The focus was not solely on individual punishment, but on restoring balance and harmony within the community. This approach, while contrasting sharply with modern legal systems, offers a valuable insight into the social dynamics and values of the medieval world. It reveals a society where the maintenance of social order and the healing of fractured relationships were considered as important, if not more so, than the formal punishment of individuals. It's a reminder that justice, in its truest sense, extends beyond the courtroom and into the heart of the community. The pervasive influence of the Church in medieval Europe extended far beyond the spiritual realm. It deeply permeated the very fabric of society, shaping its laws, customs, and even its methods of justice. The bizarre trial methods of the medieval period were not simply products of superstition or ignorance. They were inextricably linked to the Church's authority and its interpretation of divine will. The Church, wielding immense power and influence, played a crucial role in legitimizing these often cruel practices, shaping their rituals, and imbuing them with a veneer of religious sanction. Consider the trial by ordeal, a common method of determining guilt or innocence. These ordeals, which often involved subjecting the accused to dangerous and painful tests like fire, water, or hot iron, were not arbitrary inventions. They were carefully constructed rituals, steeped in religious symbolism and belief. The Church's involvement wasn't merely passive. It actively shaped the procedures, offering prayers, blessings, and pronouncements that framed the ordeal as a divinely sanctioned judgment. The very act of undergoing the ordeal was infused with religious significance, reinforcing the Church's authority and its claim to divine knowledge. The Church's influence wasn't limited to the mechanics of the ordeal. It also played a crucial role in interpreting the results. A successful outcome, surviving the ordeal unscathed, was interpreted as divine intervention, a clear sign of innocence. Conversely, failure was seen as a divine condemnation, confirming the accused guilt. This interpretation, sanctioned by the Church's authority, ensured the acceptance and legitimacy of the ordeal's outcome within the community. The Church's pronouncements on the results of these trials were rarely questioned, cementing its role as the ultimate arbiter of justice. The Church's influence extended beyond ordeals to other methods of trial, such as compurgation and oaths. Compurgation, which involved the accused swearing an oath of innocence supported by a number of corroborating witnesses, was heavily influenced by religious beliefs about the sanctity of oaths and the divine punishment of perjury. The Church's teachings on the importance of truthfulness and the consequences of false swearing added weight to the process, enhancing its perceived legitimacy. Similarly, oaths sworn on sacred relics were infused with religious significance, adding an extra layer of solemnity and reinforcing the belief in divine judgment. Even seemingly secular methods of trial were influenced by the Church's authority. The widespread belief in demonic possession and witchcraft, fueled by Church teachings, led to the development of bizarre trial methods aimed at identifying and punishing witches. Practices like witch pricking, where the accused were pricked with needles to search for demonic marks, were not simply products of folklore. They were legitimized by the Church's interpretation of Scripture and its pronouncements on the nature of evil. The Church's condemnation of witchcraft and its endorsement of methods to identify and punish witches reinforced the social stigma surrounding witchcraft and fueled the persecution of those accused. The Church's influence on medieval justice wasn't always direct or overt. It often worked through subtle means, shaping public opinion, influencing legal interpretations, and providing a framework for understanding justice itself. The Church's teachings on divine justice, sin, and redemption permeated the very understanding of crime and punishment, shaping societal attitudes towards justice and influencing the development of legal procedures. However, the Church's influence wasn't universally positive. The Church's involvement in legitimizing the often cruel and arbitrary methods of medieval trials contributed to a system that was prone to injustice and abuse. The lack of due process and the reliance on supernatural intervention often resulted in wrongful convictions and the persecution of innocent individuals. The Church's authority, while offering a framework for justice, also created a system vulnerable to manipulation and abuse of power. In conclusion, the Church's influence on medieval trial methods was profound and multifaceted. It shaped the rituals, interpretations, and even the underlying beliefs that informed the pursuit of justice. While the Church's involvement provided a veneer of legitimacy and ensured the acceptance of these methods within society, it also contributed to a system that was often unjust and prone to abuse. Understanding the Church's role is crucial to comprehending the complexities and contradictions of medieval justice. It reveals a system where religious belief and social dynamics were deeply intertwined, shaping not just the methods of trial, but also the very understanding of justice itself. The legacy of this influence continues to shape our understanding of the historical context of justice and the evolving relationship between religious authority and the administration of law. The echoes of these practices remind us of the importance of critical examination of power structures and the enduring need for fair and impartial legal systems. The slow, deliberate fading of trial by ordeal from the European legal landscape wasn't a sudden revolution, but rather a gradual erosion of its foundations, a process spanning centuries and shaped by a confluence of factors. It wasn't a single event, but a shift in societal values, legal thinking, and religious authority that ultimately rendered these dramatic tests obsolete. One significant factor was the growing influence of canon law, the body of laws governing the Catholic Church. While initially supportive of ordeals, canon law gradually began to express reservations, particularly concerning their inherent risks and the potential for miscarriages of justice. Canon lawyers, increasingly concerned with procedural fairness and the reliability of evidence, started to question the validity of judgments based solely on the outcome of a physically demanding and potentially fatal ordeal. This internal critique within the Church itself played a crucial role in undermining the legitimacy of these practices. The rise of scholasticism, a dominant intellectual movement emphasizing reason and logic, also contributed to the decline of ordeals. Scholastic thinkers, with their focus on rational inquiry and systematic analysis, found the arbitrary nature of ordeals inherently problematic. The reliance on divine intervention, while accepted within a framework of faith, clashed with the growing emphasis on rational thought and the search for objective truth. The inherent unpredictability of ordeals, where factors beyond the control of the accused could influence the outcome, further fueled this skepticism. The growing emphasis on reason and logic in legal proceedings slowly eroded the acceptance of ordeals as reliable methods of determining guilt or innocence. Furthermore, the increasing sophistication of legal procedures contributed to the decline of ordeals. The development of more formalized legal systems, with their emphasis on evidence-based arguments, witnesses, and cross-examination, offered a more structured and arguably fairer approach to resolving disputes. These new methods, while not perfect, were seen as more reliable and less susceptible to manipulation or chance than the unpredictable outcomes of an ordeal. The emergence of these alternative methods provided a practical alternative to the increasingly questioned ordeal system. The changing social and political landscape also played a significant role. The rise of powerful monarchs and the consolidation of centralized states led to a greater emphasis on state control over justice. Kings and princes, seeking to assert their authority and consolidate their power, increasingly sought to replace the decentralized and often unpredictable local justice systems with more centralized and controlled mechanisms. Ordeals, often administered by local authorities or religious figures, represented a challenge to this centralized control, making them a less desirable option for rulers seeking to establish their authority. The Crusades, while seemingly unrelated, also had an indirect impact. Exposure to different legal systems and cultures during the Crusades broadened European perspectives on justice and exposed the limitations of ordeal-based trials. The encounter with more sophisticated legal systems in the Byzantine Empire and the Islamic world highlighted the potential for more rational and evidence-based approaches to legal proceedings, further undermining the legitimacy of ordeals. The broadened horizons of European legal thought contributed to a shift away from the reliance on these older, more arbitrary methods. The gradual decline of ordeals was not without resistance. Traditions die hard, and the deeply ingrained belief in divine intervention continued to influence legal practices even as ordeals lost favor. However, the combined effect of evolving legal thought, the growing influence of canon law, the rise of scholasticism, and the changing political landscape eventually led to the widespread abandonment of ordeals as a legitimate method of determining guilt or innocence. The story of the decline of ordeals is a testament to the gradual yet transformative evolution of legal systems, reflecting a shift from faith-based judgments to more rational and evidence-based approaches to justice. The abandonment of these dramatic and often cruel methods marked a significant step towards the development of more humane and equitable legal systems, a journey that continues to this day. The echoes of these past practices, though, serve as a reminder of the enduring importance of critical examination, continuous reform, and the unwavering pursuit of justice. As the embers of the medieval era faded, so too did the fiery trials and watery ordeals that once defined its justice system. The transition from these dramatic, often brutal, methods to the more refined processes of modern justice represents a profound shift in how societies seek to determine guilt and innocence. The journey from divine intervention to evidentiary proof is a long and winding one, filled with both progress and persistent challenges. Consider, for a moment, the stark contrast between a medieval trial by ordeal, where the accused fate hung precariously on the whims of boiling water or a searing hot iron, and a modern courtroom, where meticulous evidence, expert testimony, and legal argumentation weave a tapestry of facts aimed at establishing truth. The shift reflects not only a change in methods, but also a fundamental alteration in the very understanding of justice. In the medieval world, justice was often intertwined with religious belief and societal harmony. Guilt or innocence could be determined by a perceived divine judgment, and the outcome focused as much on restoring community peace as on establishing individual culpability. The modern legal system, while far from flawless, strives for a more objective and rational approach. The emphasis is on due process, the right to a fair trial, and the presumption of innocence until proven guilty. The pursuit of justice is no longer solely reliant on divine intervention, but rather on the systematic collection and evaluation of evidence, the scrutiny of witnesses, and the application of established legal principles. While medieval societies often prioritized restoring social order above individual rights, modern justice systems, ideally, place individual rights at the forefront, seeking to ensure fairness and equity for all involved. However, the journey from medieval ordeals to modern legal systems is not a simple narrative of progress. Even in modern societies, biases, prejudices, and systemic inequalities can undermine the pursuit of justice. The complexities of modern legal processes, the uneven distribution of resources, and the potential for miscarriages of justice remind us that the ideal of a perfectly equitable and fair system remains an ongoing aspiration, not a fully realized achievement. The historical context of medieval trials offers a valuable perspective on the persistent challenges in ensuring justice for all. The enduring questions surrounding fairness and justice transcend time and place. What constitutes a fair trial? How do we ensure that justice is not only served, but also seen to be served? How do we address systemic biases and inequalities that can distort the pursuit of justice? These are questions that continue to challenge legal systems across the globe, echoing the fundamental issues that confronted medieval societies centuries ago. The lessons learned from the bizarre and often cruel methods of medieval justice serve as a cautionary tale, reminding us of the importance of vigilance, continuous reform, and a commitment to the ongoing pursuit of a truly just system. The evolution of justice is not a linear progression, but rather a complex and ongoing dialogue between tradition, innovation, and the enduring human desire for fairness and equity. The medieval ordeals, though now relegated to the pages of history, offer a compelling reminder of how far we have come, yet how far we still have to go in the ongoing quest for a truly just society. The echoes of those past practices resonate in our modern legal systems, reminding us to continuously examine our methods and strive for a more equitable and just future. The pursuit of justice is a continuous journey, a constant striving for fairness, guided by the lessons of history and tempered by the challenges of the present. The past, with its harsh realities, informs and shapes the present, ensuring that the pursuit of justice remains an enduring and ever-evolving endeavor. The medieval ordeals, in their strangeness and cruelty, serve as a powerful testament to the enduring struggle for justice, a struggle that continues to shape our world.